What's up, people? Welcome to The Sweat. I'm Emerson Lotzia, alongside absolutely nobody this morning. But that's okay, because we have analysts coming and going throughout the next 60 minutes, dishing out fantasy and sports betting advice, the stuff you really crave, like point spreads for the wild card round of the NFL playoffs. DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan and Reed Fowler, good morning, and thank you so much for being here. How are both of you doing today?
Nice to see your smiling face this morning.
Finally, we have our one seed, our guy back. The starters are back in play here.
Yeah, the first string, baby. I was resting week 17. It's all good. I'm feeling great now, that's for sure. Okay, it's cover to cover, so tell us which team covers here. Starting with Buffalo at Houston, guys. Texans favored by a field goal. Reed, who do you like?
I mean, both of these teams didn't play, really try yesterday, right? So we didn't get to see those starters. But it feels like that Buffalo has the edge on this team. Houston, not necessarily playing up to snuff like they usually do on defense. That's usually their calling card. And yet Deshaun Watson finally is getting healthier. He got a week to rest. But still, just Buffalo feels like the team that is and should be here. Buffalo's defensive line is a lot better than Houston's defensive line. So when you look at both of these quarterbacks, which I think is going to be a sneaky good matchup of quarterbacks with Allen and Watson going head to head, you really like Allen on the side in terms of what he can do in the dome. And this is a matchup. So like John Brown against Garyon Conley. Garyon Conley keeps getting burned over and over again. So give me Houston again. It looks good on paper, but it just feels like Buffalo is the team here. So give me Buffalo with a point.
Okay, Steve, which way do you lean?
Yeah, don't sleep on this game. I think actually this might be one of the more entertaining games of Wild Card Weekend. But I'm kind of side with Reed here. Buffalo has been a sneaky team against the spread, 9-5-2 on the year, which is one of the best marks in the league. And matchup-wise, this feels like probably one of the best draws they could have got. I mean, Tre'Davious White has been one of the best corners in the league. If he can shut down DeAndre Hopkins, we know that Houston really hasn't had much of a run game, so that kind of leaves them with, maybe Will Fuller, Kenny Stills, like not a lot for Watson to be using at his disposal. So I think Buffalo actually has a legitimate chance to win this game and cover. I really like them in this game here. I think this is one that I think a lot of people aren't going to give Buffalo much of a chance, but I think they got a really good chance of taking away one here.
Bukes, kind of a surprising number here, but the Patriots are a small favorite at home against Tennessee, 5 points. First time we've seen New England hosting a game on Wild Card Weekend since 2010 when the Ravens blitzed them. So what are the chances Tennessee does the same?
Yeah, home bias aside here, I think this is actually going to be a tough game for the Patriots. I think this is actually really a game where they're going to struggle here. You look at teams that use their running backs so frequently, like like the Ravens, the Browns. They've been able to run on the Patriots, and we've seen the Titans rely so much on Derrick Henry, and that could be a really big problem for them because we've seen teams gas them on the ground that use the running back heavily. And, Ryan Tannehill, we keep waiting for him to kind of regress, but he just hasn't done it like week after week. He's just getting it done against the Patriots. And you look at how poor the Patriots just looked against the Dolphins in a game where it really was a must win for them. They need as much help as they can get right now with all their offensive woes. The defense being as shaky as it's been. So now they're going to face a Titans team that's coming in red hot. I'm not liking the Patriots in this spot here. I'll take the Titans with +5.
Reed, do you also side with the Titans?
Yeah, Patriots playing wild card weekend. The last time that was the case, that Emerson's BMI was probably in the high 30s.
Oh, my God. Don't even get me started there, kid. Yeah, that was a lot of Jaeger back then. Those were my glory days.
Oh, man. You're looking svelte, baby. But look, this is a type of game, right, where New England at -5, you're coming off a bad loss in Miami. Tennessee is one of the more popular teams. So a ton of the public is going to be on Tennessee. They're going to be looking at the Patriots. If you're here locally in New England, or if you're just hearing about the Patriots, what is wrong, right? Is Tom Brady motivated? Is Bill Belichick yada, 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 yada? -5. This line is more of, let's give the Patriots respect of being here time and time and time again. Because right now, if you look at both of these teams, Tennessee is the better team. And what is the kryptonite for the Patriots? It's all of these guys like the Brian Floreses, the Mike Vrabels, the Bill O'Briens, these guys who have been in the Patriot system, knowing what the Patriots' shortcomings are. And if you look right now, it's clearly their offense. They can't get the ball going. So if they can't score on defense, the Patriots, if they can't score on special teams, what do the Patriots really have to get up into the 20s or 30s? Because Tennessee averaging over 440 yards, total yards, over the last 6 games. Ryan Tannehill, like Steve mentioned, is playing absolutely out of his mind. A.J. Brown is playing not like a rookie. And so when you look at this team, they are set for the playoffs. Tennessee is with a running back with the Incredible Hulk in their backfield, who apparently just shows up in December as one of the best running backs. Sorry, Julian Edelman, for not winning that rushing title with Nick Chubb, but look, this is the team that you don't want to face in the playoffs, the Tennessee Titans. So give me them, but be careful because the Patriots, we all know what they can do in December.
Yeah, man. Patriots, this team not built to come from behind, Reed. If they do give up early runs to Derrick Henry, they will be in trouble for sure. I know Julian Edelman is watching somewhere out there and supports everything you just said.
He's so angry. He's so angry. I had to be like his psychiatrist for him last night.
Yeah, poor guy.
Guys, moving to Sunday, it's the biggest spread on the board by far. Minnesota +8 at New Orleans. I mean, the Saints have been throttling teams in recent weeks. Heavy favorites here. How do you like the idea of that trend continuing, and who dat nation covering, Reed?
Yeah, this is a team that, again, in the playoffs is riding high momentum. We see record-setting games from both Mike Thomas, Drew Brees. This team, again, is firing on all cylinders. But -8, it just seems like a big number for Minnesota. I get it. Minnesota has lost 3 of the last 5. They're not looking good coming into this. But remember, Minnesota is a playoff-style team. Their defense and their secondary, we talked about a little bit yesterday, is bad. And so they have to really shore up and play probably more zone defense and probably cover Xavier Rhodes a little bit more and just help them out a little bit more. But if you just look at this number right now, and I get it, Minnesota only covering 40% of the time in terms of what they're doing covering the spread ATS, which gives you a little trepidation. But again, this is a little high. This is a playoff team. If we get these guys healthy, like the Dalvin Cooks, I just think this is too high. New Orleans going to win the game, but right now the spread is a little too high for me.
Who covers, Steve?
Oh my God, I would take New Orleans up to like -10, -11 at this point. They should absolutely thrash this Minnesota team. Like, what has been the biggest strength for the Vikings? It's been their run game, right? The Saints have been one of the better run defenses in the league. So I think they're going to have a lot of issues getting Dalvin Cook going in this game. You know, obviously hasn't played in a few weeks. Alexander Mattison can be back in the mix here, but Kirk Cousins has been struggling over the last part of the season here. I think that's going to continue here. You can most definitely throw against the Saints, but if we're relying on the arm of Kirk Cousins, you know, I feel like we've kind of gone through this before in playoff situations. Usually doesn't work out too well. I think the Saints should absolutely dominate the Vikings here. I feel like this is going to be probably the worst game of the 4 games here because I don't think it's going to be much of a game here. So I have no doubt that New Orleans will cover this here. And quite frankly, like I said at the top here, I would keep betting this until it gets much higher, maybe into double digits. I think New Orleans should have no problem here.
All right, see, Seattle finds itself as a slight road favorite, 1.5 at Philadelphia. The Seahawks have won in this position already this season, beating the Eagles in an ugly, rainy game back in late November. Who covers in the rematch?
I'm having trouble reading this game because I feel like I'm missing something because who do the Eagles have? Like, it's gotten to that point now. Who do they have anymore on that team to throw to? Like, obviously, we could get some of these guys back. We'll see how the practices go during the week, what the injury report looks like. But, like, as it stands as of Monday, I feel like you're just getting ridiculous value on Seattle against a Philly team that they've just gotten by with all these mediocre players. That has to stop at some point. There's going to be a game where all of a sudden Carson Wentz can't hit any of these rookies that are just being signed off the practice squad. This could be the game where that happens. Seattle isn't going to push back a lot defensively, but Seattle just has so much more to beat the Eagles, and the Eagles have to beat Seattle as it rests here on Monday afternoon. So I don't know where this line is coming from. It feels like a trap just because it feels like it's too good to be true here, but I'll absolutely take Seattle as it stands right now.
Reed, do you have trouble reading this game as well?
I just have trouble reading in general.
I know that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if you want to throw some numbers at it, right? Like, as favorites, the Seahawks are 4-6-1 ATS, right? So you might try and read a little bit in the tea leaves in that, but look, when they're an away team, they're 5-2-1 ATS with a margin of victory of 4, and when they're favorites, it's even better. And so I'm with Steve here. Is that this number seems very low, and you look at the Seahawks. You know, they've lost some of these close games, but again, they are a momentum team. That's what we see in these playoffs, especially with guys like Marshawn Lynch coming back in this team. Momentum is such a big thing that you can't quantify. Give me Seattle here as well. All
righty, we will have you two back for some NFL spin move coming up. That's right after we look ahead to a fight-filled New Year's Eve in New York City. Who will be the six? Get ready to crown a champion. DraftKings and the Professional Fighters League are back to bring you the 2019 PFL Championship Pick'em, presented by Presidente. Think you've got what it takes to win a share of $20,000 cash? Take your shot by simply selecting the winner of the 6 PFL Championship fights taking place live on ESPN2 New Year's Eve in New York City. Rack up 100 points for each winner you get right. Get 50 points more for every correct answer chosen on the 3 bonus questions. And if you lock up one of the top scores, you're going to bring home a share of the cash prize. So get in the cage with the 2019 PFL Championship Pick'em, presented by Presidente on DraftKings. The ball does not drop until the belts are raised. Catch all the fights live on ESPN2, December 31st, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, from Madison Square Garden in New York City. All right, Monday's fantasy basketball slate has 6 NBA games on it, but a lot of notable players have statuses that you guys need to be monitoring throughout the day. These 3 are ready to rock, though, I can confirm. It's our NBA panel. DraftKings contributor Garion Thorne, RotoWire's Nick Whalen, and Ryan Mogjosh, host of the Four Seasons podcast by Ball is Life. Guys, it is NBA building blocks here, so the man you'll be building your lineups around at each position, starting at guard. Who is your man, Garion?
Might sound a little weird to say, considering he's not one of the higher priced guys, but Goran Dragic has a really nice price point tonight at $5,200. You could make the case that this should just be Jimmy Butler, but where Butler might have some concerns about game flow and game script and just his playing time in the fourth quarter, of which should be a relatively lopsided game, Dragic just doesn't have to really hit some absurd minutes level. If he gets his 25 to 30, he should be perfectly fine at the usage rate he's been playing at since he came back from injury. He's played 4 games. His usage rate at 25.3% is almost identical to that of Butler's over the same span, and he's averaging well over a DraftKings point per minute played, going up against a Washington team that has slowed down in terms of their pace a little bit across the last 10 games, but is still giving up the 3rd most DraftKings points per game to the point guard position. So I think you obviously lower your ceiling a little bit with a guy like Dragic, but he's an incredibly high floor player to start a lineup with.
Nick, you going with someone a little more expensive?
I am. I mean, as you mentioned, we have a couple of injuries to monitor, and a few of those kind of hit the top of the guard position. So Trae Young is out. Kyrie Irving, of course, is still out. That knocks out the 2 highest priced guards on the slate. And then we have Brad Beal, who's listed as questionable on the other side of that Heat Wizards matchup. So he's one to keep an eye on. I'm going to look a little bit further down and go with someone who's still, especially on this slate, considered an elite option in Damian Lillard. He's at 8,500 going up against Phoenix. Back-to-back 50-plus DraftKings point games for him. 26 three-point attempts over those last 2 games, taking a ton of shots. Blazers are coming in on a 3-game skid, really need a win against a Phoenix team that, based on how the season has gone for both of these teams, pretty evenly matched. I think they bounce back tonight. I think Lillard's a big reason why. Matchup-wise, both these teams play fast. Both are in the bottom half of the league in defense. Both are in the top half of the league in offense. Should be a lot of points. I like this spot for Lillard.
Ryan, your guy at guard.
I like both of those plays. I'm going to go with Spencer Dinwiddie at 7.7K. I look for teams that play fast and play zero defense, and that's Minnesota, especially with no Cat, or I guess questionable Cat, and questionable Wiggins. The Nets are coming off a bad 2-game losing streak, like really bad. The other day against the Knicks, they had, I think it was 8 2-point field goals the entire game, which is like an all-time bad in NBA history. But I'm looking forward to the Nets bouncing back tonight, and I think they go as Dinwiddie goes. So I like Dinwiddie versus Minnesota.
Okay, forward. Your building block is who, Nick?
I'm going to go with John Collins. He's at 8,700 against Orlando. I would think about going with Giannis, but he is questionable right now. Of course, he's missed the last 2. But Collins has really hit the ground running since returning from that long suspension layoff. Played big minutes in all 3 games that he's been back. Coming off of a 55 DraftKings point game against Chicago on Saturday, 34 points, 8 rebounds, 3 blocks in that one. And more importantly, he had to take 26 shots. No Trae Young, of course, tonight for Atlanta, which, in terms of pick and roll partnership, maybe hurts a guy like Collins who's not a great shot creator, but the rest of this Hawks roster is so depleted in terms of shot creation that I think we'll see another situation where he's probably taking 20-plus shots fairly easily in a game where they'll need that to even keep it remotely close, even against an opponent that's not all that great in Orlando. But you look at Orlando, I mean, they're a team that in terms of defensive rebounding percentage is right up there near the top of the league, but they also rank second in the league in opponents' rebounds per 100 possessions. So this is a game that should settle in maybe middle of the pack in terms of pace. Orlando plays slowly, and Atlanta's on the other end of the spectrum there. But in order for them to rank that high in that metric of per 100 possessions, it basically means that they miss a ton of shots, and I expect Atlanta to miss a ton of shots. Orlando is second last in the league in overall field goal percentage. So even if it's a night where Orlando's kind of able to swarm John Collins and maybe limit the scoring, I think this is another night where he could be looking at 12 to 15 rebounds.
Ryan, who is your building block at forward?
Nick just copied me. I have John Collins as well. Everything that he just said, I think it's going to be a sloppy game, but there's no Trae Young. The Hawks need to go somewhere for offense. It may hurt for pick and rolls, yes, but the Hawks are just going to completely change the way they play. If it's not through Trae Young, it's going to be maybe to John Collins on some back-to-the-basket plays or force-feeding him down lower in the mid-range to make him create his own shot. And I look forward to him being eager on the glass, too.
All right, Garion, you didn't pick John Collins, did you?
I did. Look, it's just an insane amount of implied volume. And like Nick said, there's going to be a lot of missed shots in this game. That's only going to help his overall rebounding rate. There was some trepidation I had on Saturday about maybe utilizing Collins, just considering that, when Trae Young is not on the court this season, Atlanta's offense is only scoring 93.6 points per 100 possessions. That's like New York Knicks in the 90s level of offensive efficiency. But at the same time, he had a 39% usage rate, and in a game they would eventually lose by 35 points, he still played 33 minutes. So it's clear they have nowhere else to turn, even in a blowout situation. If his minutes are just going to be set in stone at 30-plus, regardless of how much they lose by, because they are going to lose, Collins is basically a must-play on this slate.
All right, Ryan, take us to center. What do you like?
I'm going to stick in the same game. I'm going to go Vucevic. 7.9K DraftKings sees costs. Atlanta centers really struggle with guarding anything or playing basketball in general. It hasn't been good. Vooch is on a baby heater too. I think he averages 47 DraftKings points in the last 4 games. And then Mo Bamba's questionable behind him. So I really like everything leading up to Vucevic versus this bad Hawks team.
All right, Garion, center.
I'm going to go with Rudy Gobert, who's at a really nice price point at 8K. Coming off arguably his worst game in 2 months, didn't have a double-double for the first time in 15 games against the Clippers on Saturday in a game that Utah actually won. But this really looks like a great spot for him. Prior to that dud against Los Angeles, he had scored at least 40 DraftKings points in 9 straight games. He's really just been one of the more reliable guys at this position for a long time now. And Andre Drummond and the Pistons are the kind of team that necessitates him being on the court for lengthy periods of time. So as long as he stays out of foul trouble, which I don't think is going to be that big a deal, it's not like Drummond is, a guy who has an exceedingly high usage rate in the post. I think he's just going to be a lock to reach 5x value.
Nick, your big man building block.
I'm going with the guy I feel like I pick every time, but it's Bam Adebayo, 7,600 against Washington. I know he burned fantasy owners against Philly over the weekend, had maybe his worst game fantasy-wise of the season in a game that Miami was still able to win, but I'm back on him tonight. You can get him for $7,600. He was priced at $8,900 just 3 days ago. I think maybe the implication is that Miami blows out Washington and he's out of the game early. But if that's the case, I think he's a big reason that they're up big. And the other thing, too, is Miami, as good as they've been, they haven't exactly rolled over opponents of late. They have only 2 games in their last 10 have been double-digit spreads, and one of those was an overtime game against Atlanta. But on top of all this, I mean, the overarching reason, I think, for taking Bam Adebayo is just kind of targeting this Washington front court that is reaching extreme levels of depletion. No Davis Bertans, no Thomas Bryant, no Rui Hachimura, no Mo Wagner for them once again tonight. Everyone who knows me knows how much I respect John Mahimi, but I don't really see him slowing down Bam Adebayo.
All right, guys, we're going to peep the sports betting side of tonight's NBA slate coming up right after we preview one of the mini PFL title fights Tuesday night. We've got the PFL handing out 6 $1 million belts on championship night. That's a lot of money. And since we're talking about it, let's go ahead and be about it. We got MMA legend Randy Couture here with us. Another 1 versus 7 matchup for the men's lightweight championship. Top seed, Natan Schultz. He's battling Loic Radzhabov. So how can the underdog shut down Schultz's bid here to repeat as a lightweight champion?
Well, Loic Radzhabov's coming in hot. I mean, he just beat Chris Wade, last year's semifinalist, and dashed his chances to get back into the finals again. I think a lot of people did not expect him to be in the finals. He's coming in against a guy who everybody's doubted. He won last year's championship in Natan Schultz, but he's answered those questions to those doubters in fine fashion all season long and right on into the quarterfinals. He's coming in with using his judo as usual very well. A lot of slick trips and takedowns from him, but he just plods forward and kind of wades through everything that everybody throws at him. So it's going to be a really intriguing matchup to see how Radzhabov deals with the returning champ.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing, and it's going to be a wild night inside Madison Square Garden, that's for sure. Randy Couture, you're going to be there calling every fight. Everyone, watch them all live on ESPN2 on New Year's Eve.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk hockey, shall we? And we have one hell of a dynamic duo here to lend a hand. DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich and Chris Wassel of Awesemo.com. Need your showdown picks for the Senators-Penguins meeting in Pittsburgh tonight. Chris, who is your captain?
Captain, as always, is Senior Evgeny Malkin. Just because, look, Ottawa. All right, I may have watched one of the worst hockey games last night in my life.
Oh, really?
It happened to be in Ottawa. So, look, defensively, bad. Penalty kill, not as good as it looks. Goaltending, Hogberg, who? Exactly. This sets up almost too well for Pittsburgh in some ways. There's obviously some traps here, but my choice is absolutely Evgeny Malkin tonight.
Jeffrey, your captain, captain.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, like the Senators are terrible, obviously. But the thing is, it looks like the Penguins are leaning towards starting Matt Murray in this game, and Matt Murray has just been a complete, Swiss cheese in net lately. 4 goals basically every game. It feels like he started. Even the games he wins, the Penguins win 6-4. I'm gonna go Brady Tkachuk and take the savings here at captain. I just feel like if Matt Murray's starting, 3 goals is probably a given here for Ottawa, and Tkachuk is basically, essentially their best player, best scorer on the wing, power play, etc. So I'm going to take the savings, go with Tkachuk, and spend up elsewhere. All
right, well, who do you stack with him, Jeff?
Yeah, and again, this goes to the point. You spend up on Tkachuk, you can spend up elsewhere. I'll pay up for Chris Letang. It's still a great spot for the Pittsburgh offense too, obviously. Hoberg, like I said, is just as bad as Murray pretty much as a goaltending duo. So I really feel like getting exposure to the big guns here is a good thing. Chris Letang, to me, the easily the best defenseman in this game. High shot volume. He's going to play a ton on the power play. So Chris Letang.
All right, Mr. Wassel, who do you stack with your captain?
See, and this is where I go backwards a little bit. I mean, I have to keep playing Brian Rust until his legs or arms or something falls off. I mean, it's one of those weird things where at some point we as experts are going to just have to sit there and stomach the fact that this guy might actually be somewhat good enough to produce in this lineup, and it's not a fluke anymore. Now, the nice part is I can sit there, take those 2 players and double mini stack this and piggyback to say like an Anthony Duclair and perhaps a Jean-Gabriel Pageau, just because Pageau almost kills the Penguins as much as he hurts the Montreal Canadiens. He does have a point-a-game career record against them, which is very solid. And also just seems to have this knack of playing well in the back end of back-to-backs. I mean, this year, again, a point-a-game player on the back end of back-to-back. That's pretty rare. Usually you expect guys to tire out, and this guy does not.
All righty. Chris, how about some value?
There's always value in this lineup. Now, with one game, you can sit there and argue, well, maybe not. But there is this little part of me that I can't believe this. Alex Galchenyuk is making a comeback, guys, little by little. I mean, early in the season, some had given up on him. He has points in 3 of his last 4 games. He's starting to shoot the puck more. We're finally seeing something that resembles the Alex Galchenyuk that we saw once upon a time in Montreal before all the scandal and everything else hit. That's probably one of your big value plays for tonight.
Jeff, value. Who's your guy?
Yeah, I like going with Galchenyuk here too. He's definitely played a little bit better the last 2 games. I like going with, again, if you do captain Tkachuk, I like going with Peugeot as well. He's not really good value, but I feel like you almost got to play him if you're going to captain Tkachuk. I like going with more extreme value here. I mentioned the Senators offense definitely in play. Colin White still gets power play exposure. He's only 2,200. You play him, then you can really stack the big guys. Again, it's just kind of a play against the goalies in this game, which are both terrible. So Colin White for me, 2,200.
Ulrich, though, who are you fading? Is there someone on here you're like, yeah, just don't roster that guy?
I'm fading both goalies. I really, honestly, am not sure if you need to play a goalie in this showdown slate. It sounds a little bit crazy for an NHL showdown, but I honestly could see both these guys putting up like 10 points, 12 points, and then just, you can stack the forwards. So it's a little bit of a risky play for showdown. It doesn't work out very often, but I really feel like this game, the way it sets up, you can fade the goalies.
All right, biggest
Assuming
fade.
Matt Murray starts over Tristan Jarry, then it's a different story.
That's big. I mean, there's no way that Pittsburgh's going to confirm that before 11:30, and if they do, I'll be impressed.
Chris, who are you fading? Same strategy here?
Yeah, I have to fade the goalies. I mean, I watched last night firsthand. Ottawa can give up 3 goals in no time flat. And unfortunately with Pittsburgh, when Matt Murray plays of late, the numbers don't lie. I mean, he barely gets through half a game without giving up 3 goals. So that's a big problem. And hey, look, don't mess with it. Don't overthink this one, like Jeff said.
Chris, is that a dog behind you? Or it appears that the door's opening. What is it?
Door opening, that's all. And a Christmas tree.
Yeah, is there an animal? Is there an animal behind you?
Lurking around.
What animal is that?
Okay, that is a mixed shepherd.
Oh, wonderful. Alrighty. Well, thank you guys, hockey dudes. We love seeing you. Now to more PFL championship goodness. Not 1, not 2, but 6 $1 million belts are on the line at the PFL World Championship. We got Hall of Famer Randy Couture here to break it all down. Randy, I got to ask you here about the men's welterweight championship. We have the Hawaiian slugger, Ray Cooper III, clashing with David the Bulldog Machad. Cooper making it this far last year, did not win, has nothing to show for it. Is he in good position, though, to take home the title this time?
Well, I don't know if there's a more American fight out there on the card for this one. And we got a Native Hawaiian and a Native American going at it for $1 million. Pretty cool. Both these guys are sluggers. We've seen Ray Cooper come in with a very particular ferocity that you rarely see. And I think we've seen him temper that ferocity a little bit this season, and that's been working out for him. I think he felt like he overdid it in the finals last year, and it didn't pay off for him. So I look for him to be a little more tempered, to use his wrestling when he needs to, and he has the capability of knocking anybody out. David Machad also with a very strong wrestling pedigree from South Dakota. He was a wrestler there and a football player there. Great hands, coming off a tear through the quarterfinals and the semifinals with some great performances. And he's got the capability of knocking somebody out too. So the chances of this one going the distance are slim and none.
All right, all of you watching this, you can watch Randy call all 6 PFL World Championship fights on ESPN2 New Year's Eve live from Madison Square Garden. Alrighty, we hit on these spreads for Wildcard Weekend to start the show. Now we'll see who's going over or under the totals. DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, he's back. You just saw him talking hockey. And the fantasy girl, Rosalie Michaels. It's wonderful to see both of you. Rosalie, I'd like to start with you. Buffalo at Houston, over or under this 41.5 point total?
Yeah, this is a really tight one for me. This is going to be a close one. I mean, we all know that Buffalo is just terrible against the spread. They're 1-4 in the last 5, 4-12 on the season, and then when they're the away team, they're 2-6. So none of that bodes well for the over here. And plus, they're just not putting up a lot of points. Their defense is doing really, really well, but their offense not scoring a ton of points. The most points that they're getting is like against Pittsburgh, 17 points, not great. But Houston can put up a lot of points. They've been doing really well, even against those tough teams like New England, like Baltimore, like Kansas City, those tougher defenses, still putting up a good amount of points. So I think that Houston will win this, but I think it's going to be really close, and it's going to be under that 41-point total.
Yeah, Jeff, this total should tell you this will not be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, no, Rosalie mentioned some of the trends here. I mean, both these teams had losing records, hitting the over in season. Buffalo was like she said, it was like 4-11, 4-12, whatever. They basically were just an under machine, and they kind of have been under Sean McDermott. I think this number is almost perfect. I think it's a touch too high too. I would lean towards the under. I do feel like Buffalo's offense is going to be able to score against Houston though. So it's not exactly my favorite total to play, especially indoors. We saw Josh Allen and the Bills perform well in a dome in Texas before when they beat the Cowboys. So I could see this going over, but again, just with the trends these two teams have played, solid defense on Buffalo. I could see like a 2017 game playing out, and I think that's more likely. So I'll take the under.
All right, Jeff, what do you think about this Tennessee-New England game? Over or under 43.5?
Yeah, completely different story for me here. I really like the over. I know New England obviously coming off a loss to Miami, but I have liked the way their offense has looked the last couple of weeks. They were able to move the ball a little bit against Miami. They were able to move the ball the week before. And Tennessee's defense, it's not like they've been stalwarts here. They're coming in banged up as well. They did allow A.J. McCarron to get out to a lead against them here. I feel like Tom Brady and the Patriots are going to be able to move the ball. Ryan Tannehill, we know, is playing well. Derrick Henry is going to be able to run against this New England offense. So I really feel like you're going to see some points here. I like the over in this game.
What do you think, Rosalie?
Yeah, I think this is a tale of like two teams, right? One going this way, one going this way. And it's weird to see New England struggle, especially against Miami. And so the New England defense that we've been so afraid of all year looked terrible against Miami at home. And Tennessee is just flying right now. Yeah, Houston, wasn't really playing all of their starters last week and stuff. So, how much can we rely on that? But if you look at the weeks prior to that, Tennessee's offense has been doing really well, and their defense is pretty good too against the pass, not as good against the run. So I think that I'm going over just because I think that both teams are going to be able to score. You look at the trends here, Tennessee is 9-1 and hitting the over the past 10 games. So that's pretty encouraging. If you look at the two games last year between these two teams, there was one during the regular season in November, and then one in the playoffs the year before in January, and both of those totals went over this. It's going to be an interesting matchup between Vrabel and his former coach Belichick. I like it to go over.
All right, we got the biggest total on the slate here. Minnesota at New Orleans, 47. Over or under that, Rosalie?
Any New Orleans game, I'm just going to go over. It's just, it's hard to not go over here. But Minnesota's doing really well too. Last 10, they're 7-3, hitting the over. Both of these teams, know how to score a lot of points. The defenses are pretty good, but I still see them scoring well. Each team does score well against good defenses, so I'm not worried about that at all. I'm going over here in a very high-scoring game.
Yeah, Jeff, Saints are peaking right now. Vikings just been plagued by question marks about their performance.
Yeah, I mean, look, New Orleans is definitely on a roll here. They put up 34 more points in 6 of their final 7 games. It's a pretty insane run. They have had weak matchups, so that is something to consider, but I'm on the same page as Rosalie here. I just feel like I got to take the over in any Saints game. I feel like even against Minnesota, who's a better defense than a lot of the teams they've been going up against, they're still not going to be able to stop them. Not in the Superdome. Minnesota's secondary, not been good all year. I don't like the way they've looked the last 2 weeks either. So the only worry here is does Minnesota just completely get blown out of the building and Kirk Cousins just plays like he did against Green Bay and they only put up 7 points. I feel like they'll show up a little bit more. Adam Thielen should be a little bit more healthy for this game. I'll take the over here, although, again, I feel like it's not really the greatest side to play. I'd rather just play New Orleans on the spread, to be honest. But, again, just the way New Orleans has been trending towards the overs and the way their offenses have been going, I feel like over 47, I got to take it.
Jeff, Seattle, Philadelphia, 46. This one feels a little high.
It does feel a little high, and I probably will lean towards the under here as well. I know that's not much of an endorsement, but I think a lot of people look at this, the way these two teams played early in the season was a defensive battle. I'm expecting a little bit more wide open play here. Seattle's defense has not been great to close the season, still dealing with some injuries there. Obviously, the secondary of Philadelphia has been well documented. They play good in spots, but they also have just given up some massive games. So I do still lean towards the under here. I feel like, Marshawn Lynch being back, Pete Carroll kind of revealed his hand there last week. Obviously, they got down to San Francisco, but, the Philadelphia offense is not San Francisco in terms of efficiency, although Carson Wentz is playing well. So 46, it does feel like too big. I'll take the under.
Rosalie, so many questions about these defenses. I'm talking from a health and performance perspective, too.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because we've seen this year in the league that it's not these big passing offenses that are doing really, really well this year. A lot of the big passing offenses like Tampa Bay didn't make the playoffs. I saw a stat where 5 of the 6 top passing quarterbacks didn't make the playoffs, which tells me there's a lot of good defense going on, right? You need good defense in order to win this game this year, which is the opposite of what we saw last year. So I just don't trust Philadelphia's offense at all. I'm going under here as well with Jeff. Seattle will play up to their competition. That's what they do. We saw them get a slow start last night and then finally come back against a really, really good San Francisco defense, though. Philly's defense is not good. So they're going to be able to throw the ball, and we're going to see a lot of Lockett. We're going to see a lot of DK Metcalf. We're going to see some Jerron Brown, and getting the tight ends involved as well. But Philly 2-6 at home, hitting the over, so not a lot of faith there. Seattle was still able to put up 21 points, but I don't think that Philly will be able to put up the points. If you look at when they go up against decent defenses, 17 points, 9 points, 10 points, that's it out of them. These other high-scoring games were against teams like the Giants, Washington, and Miami.
All right, you two, coming up, we're going to put a fantasy spin on some of the Black Monday news rolling in right after one more look at tonight's NBA slate. If you're calling it the biggest night in MMA, you'd be correct. The PFL Championships going down inside Madison Square Garden on New Year's Eve. Randy Couture, you know what you're talking about. So let me ask you this. In the men's heavyweight championship, the 7th seed, Jared Rashol, will fight number 5, Ali Isaev. You got a couple guys ripping off upsets to get here. What happens between these two on the 31st of December?
Well, this is a very interesting matchup because both these guys have amazing wrestling pedigrees. Jared Russell is a 4-time All-American from Oklahoma State University, and he uses his wrestling in his fighting style predominantly. He's going to try and find a way to take down Isaev, who's an Olympic wrestler for Russia. He's an amazing competitor as well. Both giant guys. Both guys heavily rely on that wrestling background. So it's hard to say who's going to have their way, who's going to go out and impose their will, establish that top game, and punish the other guy as much as possible. I like this matchup. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
Randy Couture, we'll see all 6 champions crowned on New Year's Eve. It's the PFL Championships live on ESPN2 from New York City. DraftKings as a sweat is back, and so is our NBA panel. DraftKings contributor Gary and Thorne, RotoWire's Nick Whalen, Ryan Mogjosh, host of the 4 Seasons podcast by Ball is Life. Okay, dudes, chase or fade. The following bets on tonight's slate. Largest spread, Magic, 12.5-point home favorites against the Hawks. Chase or fade, they cover that, Nick.
Yeah, I think this game could end up being a little bit closer than we expect, but I will still take Orlando to cover. I mean, 12.5 is a lot to trust, any team like the Magic with, but when you consider the opponent, I mean, Atlanta, as we talked about in the DFS segment, is just so depleted. Even losing someone, just one key player in Trae Young for a team that's so reliant on its top 2, especially a number 2 guy in Collins who does kind of struggle to create his own shot. It's just going to be a train wreck offensively. And Orlando, they play so slowly. It does kind of help out their defensive metrics, but this is a team that I think should be able to, for the most part, swallow up any Atlanta Hawk not named John Collins. And, you look up and down that roster, I don't know who's going to be scoring points for Atlanta tonight. This is a team that's coming off a 35-point loss to the Chicago Bulls on Saturday. They have 2 separate 10-game losing streaks since mid-November. And obviously most of that comes with Trae Young in the lineup. Again, I like John Collins, if you're a DFS player, but other than that, there's just not much to like on the Atlanta side tonight.
Ryan, sounds like everyone's expecting a train wreck of a game. Enough, though, for the Magic to cover.
It is going to be a train wreck of a game. It's going to be ugly. The Hawks are bad with Trae Young, and he's fun to watch, but still not winning games. Now they're without Trae Young. I expect 12.5 to be enough. I'm chasing this. It is a lot of points, but the Hawks are really bad. And looking at this now, I kind of want to chase it more than I initially did. So, yeah, I'm taking Magic by a landslide.
All right, Gary, and is this a hard chase for you as well?
Yeah. It's hard to have a lot of confidence in the Hawks. As I mentioned, their offense is just anemic when Trae Young has been off the court. And obviously, a lot of the 518 minutes where they've accumulated that 93.6 offensive rating have been without John Collins, who is a much more reputable offensive player than anything they have aside from Trae Young. But I still think that this is going to be a relatively lopsided game, even with the Magic's general inconsistencies on offense as well. But they've almost been Herculean in their ability to just beat up on other sub 500 teams. I think they're like 14-2 in games where they get to play another bad team. The Magic just take care of business in games they need to win, and I think they're going to win this one pretty handily. So I'll chase.
All right, let's go to one of the higher totals on the slate. That is between the Heat and the Wizards, 228.5. Chase or fade, this hits the over, Ryan.
This is the first time in the history of this that I'm going to fade an over.
All right.
Yes. Because they have no Bertans. My guy's out. He's out. Rui's out. Beal is questionable. And I wouldn't feel good if I bet the over on 228.5. Plus, the Heat play defense. The Heat are a really good defensive team. So for the first ever time in history, I am fading an over with the Wizards.
Is that right? Gary, and what do you think here, pal?
You kind of do have to wait until we get official word on Beal, because there's no possible way you're taking this at over 228.5 if Bradley Beal's not playing. But there are some trends that suggest this gets there. 9 of the last 10 Heat games have gone over. 4 of the last 5 Wizard games have gone over. The Heat's defense, I think this is kind of like a small sample size anomaly, but across their last 10 games, they only have the 22nd best defensive rating in all of basketball. But like Ryan said, I think when this really comes down to it, there's just not a lot of offensive options in Washington, especially if Beal doesn't play. The Heat should just be able to limit these guys to 95, 100 points. And then it's just a matter of how much the Heat want to score and really blow out the lead in the fourth quarter. So I'll take the under here.
All right, Mr. Whalen, how much does Bradley Beal's status impact whether you want to chase or fade this?
It does impact it to some degree, but I think I would be tempted to go under either way. I'll make it a perfect 3 for 3 and fade this. Like those guys both alluded to, I think Miami should be able to pull its weight in this contest offensively. This could be a game where they get to the low 120s or maybe even the mid 120s, but I could totally see it being like a 125, 100 type of game where you basically miss out on the over just because Washington can't score. And even when Brad Beal's been on the floor with this surrounding talent, it's been really hard for him to play and score efficiently. But if he's out, like Arian said, I just don't know how you could possibly expect Washington to get to the 105 to 110 type of total that you need to feel good about them pulling this one over 229 or above. But they're just too depleted. They have been for the last couple of weeks, and until they have more than half of their roster at least being competent NBA talent, it's just really hard to feel good about them pushing that point total over 105 on any given night.
All right, we got the Timberwolves, 2.5-point underdogs at home against the Nets. You can get them for plus 114 on the money line. Chase or fade, picking the home dog to win. Garion.
So, okay, this one's tough because there's just so many variables. The 2 biggest variables you could possibly have for a Minnesota team. Karl-Anthony Towns is questionable, as he has been for seemingly the last 100 years. And Andrew Wiggins is also questionable. So, This spread is obviously going to change when we get definitive news on those two guys. However, this seems like a very good spot to just bet the Nets anyway and kind of bank on the fact that Towns isn't going to play. And Towns is really the key here. Minnesota's offense is actually 18.6 points per 100 possessions worse when Karl-Anthony Towns is not on the court. Their defense is better when he's not on the court, as I think a lot of people could attest to, but their offense is just disgusting when Towns is not playing, and it gets even worse when Wiggins isn't out there. And then on top of that, just in a vacuum, they're a terrible home team. They have been all season long. They have the worst net rating of any home team in the Western Conference, and that's with Towns and Wiggins playing a majority of those games. So I think you just take Brooklyn here. I think Ryan mentioned it earlier. They're looking to bounce back after two pretty tough losses, and I think they do so tonight.
Nick, can the home dogs win this thing?
I don't see how you could feel confident about picking Minnesota right now. They have one win since Thanksgiving. That came in double overtime a couple of games ago against Sacramento. And I know Karl Towns, missing all this time is certainly factored into that, but he's also not, quite on the level where, if he plays or doesn't play, you would feel, drastically differently about a game like this. Even if Karl Towns comes back, is he 100%? And the Wolves, are kind of 50-50 in games like this anyway, even when they're at full strength. So, right now, based on what we know, or I guess don't know about Karl-Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins' status, this would be a stay away for me. I would side with Brooklyn. In the event that both of those guys are ruled in, and you can, still get it at this line, which I don't think you'd be able to, then I would maybe think about it. But there's just too much risk involved right now, and I think I would side with Brooklyn either way.
Yeah, Ryan, things could get pretty ugly here without Cat and Wiggins.
Yeah, I'm fading this as well. I don't like Minnesota for a lot of reasons. But for tonight, Cat's questionable, Wiggins is questionable, and even if they do play, not at 100%, I like the matchup for the Nets. I like Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan guarding Cat, and then I like sticking Taurean Prince on Wiggins. And I mentioned the Nets are on the bounce back tour tonight. So for a lot of reasons, with or without Cat and Wiggins, I'm picking the Nets.
All right, taking a look at some player props here. Suns visiting the Blazers. You got Damian Lillard plus 140 to be the top point scorer in that one. Devin Booker plus 170. Chase or fade, though. That Booker is the better bet, Nick.
This is a really fun bet. I think I would lean Lillard, who I talked about earlier in the DFS segment, as a guy I like tonight. I know Booker is coming off back-to-back 30-plus point games, but before that, he had 4 straight games of fewer than 20 points. I look at both of these guys as having pretty similar ceilings night to night. They could go off for 45. They could give you even a 50-point game once or twice a year. But I think Booker's ceiling, or Booker's floor, I should say, night to night is a little bit lower. So, in the event that both players were to struggle, I think Lillard is the one who I trust to get to, 25, 26 points, whatever it might be, just on sheer volume, getting to the free throw line, things like that. But this should be a fast-paced game on both ends, a lot of scoring overall, two pretty poor defenses. But the difference in the odds, 140 versus 170 to me isn't quite enough to sway me from Lillard over to Booker.
Ryan, is Booker the better bet?
This was really close and really fun. I think Booker is the better bet tonight, and it was close for me. You can't go wrong with either one. But what did it for me, both of these guys are coming off of 50-plus DraftKings points performances. It ended up being, I like Booker versus the guys that Portland's going to throw at him versus Lillard and the guy that Phoenix is going to go throw at them. But like I said, really tough, and it's a toss-up. By a hair, I'm going Booker.
Is this one tough for you, Garion?
Yeah, like Nick said, it's two very similar players in terms of their ability to just go off for 45 points in any given night. But I would agree with what he also said in that I just trust Lillard's floor a little bit more. I think we've seen Booker have a little bit more of a sporadic outcome so far this season with the presence of Ricky Rubio kind of taking the ball out of his hands on a lot of possessions. And then Phoenix's defense has just been terrible across their last 10 games. They're actually allowing a 49.3% opponent field goal percentage. That's the worst mark of any Western Conference team in that span. They have the second worst overall defensive rating their last 10 games as well in the West. So I think Lillard's going to be able to take advantage of a pretty shaky defense right now.
You three have a fantastic new year. We will see y'all later this week. We're putting a fantasy spin on NFL headlines after this. All right, here to break down the biggest night in mixed martial arts is MMA legend himself, Randy Couture. We're taking a look at this PFL Women's Lightweight Championship. 6-0 in her young career, Kayla Harrison. And facing the only woman who's taken her a full 3 rounds inside the cage here, man, Larissa Pacheco. How do you see the first ever women's lightweight world title playing out?
Well, I think Larissa Pacheco is absolutely a formidable opponent. She's got a ton of experience. She's got great hands. And she's got a great Brazilian jiu-jitsu pedigree. She's going to have her hands full with Kayla Harrison coming off her 6th victory. And I think the gloves are off now with Kayla Harrison. She's decided it's not about being perfect anymore. It's about being effective. She's going to go right out, wade through Pacheco, and try and get her hands on her and put her where she wants to be, which is on the ground, and try to use that judo effectively on the ground. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup. I like the fight. I think it's one of those ones where you could flip a coin and make a case for either one of these gals winning this fight.
All right, watch the PFL World Championship go down New Year's Eve inside Madison Square Garden on ESPN2 live. Randy, he'll be on the call. Okay, wrapping up our final Monday edition of The Sweat of 2019 with these 4 wonderful human beings, DraftKings contributors. We have Reed Fowler, we have Steve Buchanan, we have Jeff Ulrich, we have the fantasy girl Rosalie Michaels. Gentlemen and lady, it's NFL spin move. So starting with the 49ers beating the Seahawks last night, and now San Fran has the second best odds to win it all now at plus 400. You like those odds though, Steven? You like those odds now, Jeff?
I mean, not really. I like San Francisco as a team. Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, is still a little bit underrated here. But you look at the odds, and I can't in good faith take the 49ers at plus 400 when you have the Chiefs at plus 450 and the Saints at plus 600. I just feel like as teams, we're getting a lot of Emerson today. This is great. I just feel like as a better upside here to win everything. So there I am. It's so hard to talk. I'm on camera. I can't just gaze into my own eyes here. But no, I mean, look, San Francisco obviously wrapping up home field is nice, but first kind of time they're in the playoffs. I like the chances of the Chiefs and the Saints better to take it all down. And those two teams are, like I just mentioned, available at better odds. That's kind of why I'm out on the 49ers right now at plus 1.
Let's look at Reed's face while he answers this question.
No, if there's any face that we need to look at for an extended amount of time on this panel, it's definitely Rosalie, not Bucks here.
True.
But look, what Jeff was saying resonates with me as well. I mean, when you look at just the path that these guys are going to take in the NFC, it's a little bit tougher. And one of the teams that, again, we'll get to in a little bit is Seattle. And Seattle is a team that really, in my mind, should have been where Green Bay is right now. They really should have switched. I don't know how Green Bay is 13-3 and a Seattle team is 11-5. It doesn't feel right to me. You look at Seattle and you look at that defense and the ability and the experience from both the Seattle team and New Orleans. I just like those odds a little bit better on the NFC side.
All right, Rosalie, are these the odds you like the most?
Yeah, I agree with the guys. No, I really like New Orleans as opposed to San Francisco. San Francisco looked good last night. They did against the Seahawks, but that game that they played against New Orleans, there's a little bit of controversy surrounding that game, right? It was really high scoring, really close game. I think that even in San Francisco, I think New Orleans can come in and beat San Francisco if it comes to that. So I think New Orleans has the best shot out of the NFC. I like those odds, like Jeff said, a little bit better. And then even if San Francisco does make it to the Super Bowl, they're going to have to beat either Baltimore or Kansas City, which I don't think they can do.
Okay, Steve, I believe you're with us now. Would you like to?
Here I am, looking at my face. Everything's great here. The 49ers beat up on a lot of bad teams this year. And when they've been facing, teams that are in the playoff contention, they've struggled here. I mean, they barely got by the Seahawks there with the Saints. They barely won that matchup there. Like, they struggle against good teams. And I think that's going to be a huge dose of reality once they get into the playoffs here. Like, I don't like these odds at all because, quite frankly, I don't think they're going to make it very far in the playoffs. So I think these are enticing odds looking at the team that you see on paper. But once it comes to some stiff competition, I don't think they're going to match up well.
Steve, let's stick with you here. Browns will have a new coach next year, Baker's third coach in 3 seasons after Mr. Kitchens was canned. How much do you blame him for the Browns' struggles? And does a new coach make the Browns a playoff team next season?
It's tough, man, because, I mean, Kitchens, when he took over the play calling, I think it was last year, like, Baker Mayfield strived under him. Like, he looked very well, but now we get a full year of him, and Baker Mayfield, could barely complete 60% of his pass attempts on the season. I mean, they definitely had their fair share of injuries with Odell, Jarvis Landry, but, I mean, there was just some games where, red zone play calling was just absolutely asinine. It's just, they definitely need, I think, like a whole new culture there. Like, I know that's what they tried to do this season here, but, maybe Baker Mayfield is just not the guy in that system. Like, it's really hard to figure out because the talent around him was immense. He was surrounded by a ton of talent, but they just couldn't get it done. They're going to try it again with the new head coach. We'll see how this one works out. But, I mean, it's just so tough right now because there's just so many pieces that I feel like need to be aligned with the Browns.
Reed, what will make Cleveland a postseason team next year?
A systematic change to how they operate. We have to start really looking in how Freddie Kitchens got this head coaching job. I mean, he was a quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator, and a head coach in a very short amount of time. We see other guys like Josh Daniels and these other players, these other coaches really get their feet wet and their experience in coaching at all levels. I mean, Freddie Kitchens rose through the ranks very, very quickly. So when you look at it, that was what I questioned earlier in the preseason and how these guys were getting so much hype. And I don't think when you look to the future, I don't think they bring in another first-time head coach. I think that's something that they have to look at because, again, the culture, we saw it with Cleveland, that it dissipated towards the end of the season with the brawls in Pittsburgh and just all of the turmoil that we saw with Jarvis Landry and all that Beckham on the sideline. It's not going to be another first-time head coach. I know there's a lot of teams out there, or a lot of names that have been thrown out there so far, but I get some experience in there at head coach to wrangle this team together.
Rosalie, who do you blame in Cleveland for the team's struggles this season?
I blame the Browns for the Browns' struggles. I mean, is the curse real? How do you have so much talent on your team and go through so many QBs and so many coaches throughout time? You keep failing, they're mentioning that they want a new coach that is a strong leader. And who are they looking at? Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels is not a strong leader. We saw him in Denver, and he's a great offensive coordinator. He does a great job in New England under Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick, that's a strong leader. Of course, they're not going to get Belichick again, but the Browns are that head office is where their troubles are. They need to, like Reed said, they need to have a total systematic change within that organization.
The Browns had Belichick back in the day, and they even screwed that up. Jeff, what do you think in Cleveland? Who are you pointing the finger at?
It's a little bit of Baker's fault as well. I mean, he admitted it early in the year. He didn't come in as prepared as he should have been, but that's Freddie Kitchens' fault for not getting his players on the same page here. So, yeah, I think the Freddie Kitchens experiment was an experiment, and it didn't work out. They brought in a guy like Todd Monken at OC, and they didn't even let him run plays. He was like a top 5 offensive coordinator the year before. It made no sense. The good thing they did is they cut the cord right away. I think this would have been just as big a disaster next year. We'll see what happens. The talent is definitely there. I still believe Baker Mayfield could be like a top 10 quarterback. So at least on the Browns side, they did make the right move in getting rid of him.
Yeah, Pat Shurmur's been fired in New York. Ron Rivera will reportedly become the next head coach of the Redskins. But let's wrap up this show here, guys, with Jameis Winston. Threw a walk-off pick six to give him a poetic 30 touchdown and 30 interceptions on the year. Bruce Arians saying after the game about Winston, there's so much good and so much outright terrible. Winston is heading to free agency this offseason. Does he return to the Bucs? And if not, where could he land, Jeff?
What is it with Jameis Winston? I guess it's because he was like the first overall pick or first round pick.
Yeah, they kept giving him opportunity after opportunity there.
Or even be talked about as a starter next year after throwing 30 interceptions and 7 pick sixes. Why are people so enamored with Jameis Winston? It blows my mind. No, he shouldn't be landing anywhere. He probably will land somewhere. I have no idea. I actually think that Arians will probably try to resign him because he loves to try and rebuild players. So he'll probably be back with Tampa Bay. I don't get it. He should not be a starting quarterback. The Jameis Winston experiment has been given numerous chances. It's failed every time. So,
Reed, where will the Jameis Winston experiment begin next season?
Jeff's probably right with Tampa Bay, but look at the other 4 teams really that need a quarterback: Chicago, Carolina, Cincinnati, maybe even Pittsburgh, right? You talk about those 4 teams.
Ooh.
I know Steve likes someone else to be in Carolina, but like those are the other teams that would need a quarterback. So if not Tampa Bay, it's one of those other 4.
All right, Rosalie, what say you?
Yeah, I say he stays in Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians loves him, has always loved him. And, he threw 30 interceptions, but he also threw 30 touchdowns. So there's only one part of his game you need to really work on, and that's throwing less interceptions. BA can do it.
Steven.
Yeah, I see the credits going on the bottom of the screen. I know I got no time here. He's still averaging 319 passing yards per game. The guy is going to start somewhere, put him in Cincinnati, and be done with it.
Interesting. Okay, we got to wrap. We're back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. That is New Year's Eve, the day before New Year's Day. Adios, everybody.